Now, I won't claim that I am a fan of Anime News Network. Now, when it comes to them just covering anime news without some sort of bias or some sort of political twist, they do well. I enjoy their content. They bring out a lot of good news bits. They cover it pretty decently well. Nothing to complain there. Then there's the other side of Anime's News Network, which is their opinion pieces and their reviews and their impressions, which, like the name implies, they're very opinionated, which is fine. But they're typically very Western field, and thus they have a very Western spin on it, and there's a lot of sensitivities of the West that they really do like to jab in there. And so, yes, because I'm not really of that mindset, obviously I'm not going to agree with any of it. So why bother? Now, there are some ANIN writers that are good, and I really do appreciate their opinions on stuff. They every now and then they'll get somebody in there that's writing about the show that I enjoy. But it does seem like here recently they've been coming under fire. Let's call it the Anime News Network versus Kamikatsu battle royale that's happening right now, where one of their writers just really doesn't like Kamikatsu, but unfortunately doesn't seem to want to stop writing about it. Probably because they're getting clicks. I don't know. It's essentially a hate watch. They're hate watching the show and they're just bashing the hell out of it. And people don't like it and they keep doing it. And it seems like it caused them to have to defend their writer by making a whole This Week in Anime article, which that's an issue in itself, which we'll get into. But yes, it started off with the first 3 episodes impressions, claiming things like comedy is aimlessly mean-spirited. Obvious that Kamikatsu believes that screaming and self-aware fan service is enough to be funny. Having an attempted force scene that is played for laughs. It's still bad enough to be the worst thing you'll see on a given day. Yeah, you should probably stop watching it. Because everything you listed there is the point. And you obviously missed the point. It doesn't work for you. Comedy is subjective. Move on. But, like I said, whether it be for clicks or because they're bored, they keep going. Episode 4 Impressions comes out, says, believe it or not, I don't actually like writing negatively about stuff. Could have fooled me. While there's plenty of value in dissecting something for its failures and figuring out what went wrong, I'm much more energized when discussing things I connect with. Then stop. Just stop. But that's not how journalism works these days. You gotta get the clicks. Keep writing the things that people get upset about, right? Moving on, quote, Roy may be a walking nosebleed, but even he shouldn't be freaking out of this 3 a.m. Denny's pancake. I'm assuming they're meaning to say, but even he shouldn't be freaking out over this 3 a.m. Denny's pancake? Yeah. What is a Denny's pancake? Yeah. No, Google says that doesn't exist. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but is that implying that you're body shaming now? We're upset about crude humor and all this other stuff, but you're okay with body shaming now? Anyways, that aside, it continues on episode 5. Again, I don't know why they're still going, but here we go. What are they saying here? Oh, of course, they didn't like the plot twist. Big shock there. You had the presupposition that you didn't like it, so why would you enjoy the plot twist? And I assumed you hate episode 6 for the much more raunchier humor. Yep. Quote, you'll just have to keep yelling louder and louder. Yeah. Looks like they don't like the humor. Big shock. Nothing changes. Let's be clear here. The age-old saying, comedy is subjective. So if it's comedy based on a show that is pretty much mostly comedy, like 99%, if it doesn't work for you, move on. It's never gonna work for you. I've had this a million times watching anime. It never changes. Move on. But yes, that's when we get into the necessity, apparently, to do a This Week in Anime. Yes, the wonderful This Week in Anime articles that Andrew, as a past web designer, absolutely hates. I absolutely hate the layout of this from a visual standpoint and just aesthetic standpoint. It just looks dumb. It's essentially an article laid out to look like an instant messaging conversation that never plays out like an instant message conversation and just looks hella tacky. The other reason I really hate these particular articles is because it always plays out the same way. They open up with introductions, then they'll put a quick jab into the show they're talking about, just a quick little tap. Then they'll copy and paste a bunch of Wikipedias and information about the creators to make them look like the authority in the discussion. Then proceed to blab a bunch before closing with some dumb joke that never lands. But you do you. Yes, the same This Week in Anime that basically attacked Faraway Paladin and Mushoku Tensei in a very tasteless way, right after having an interview with the writer themselves where they could have easily deduced that the Faraway Paladin writer was inspired by Mushoku Tensei, but then proceed to bash what inspired them to claim this whole idea of what's the lesser of two evils? Well, at least it's not a file. It was just terrible. It was tasteless. It was dumb. But yes, with this particular This Week in Anime, they decided to join the fight because, again, this writer is constantly hate watching Kamikatsu and people don't like it, and now it's time for them to come in and tell everybody that the writer's right and you're wrong. This could be good. This could be nothing but good, right? Kicking off the article, they make their jab. Which is the elephant in the room? The CGI. Can't blame them. I think it looks dumb too. I'm not gonna apologize for that one. Everybody's still claiming that it's intentional. I think it's just cheap. And so everybody's attaching the whole thing with the harvester to obviously this is intentional too. Technically, it's all intentional in the end. Whatever is published is intentional because they did it. Now, whether they would like to do better CGI is the question mark. They probably would if they had the ability to. It's obvious the studio is very new. It's very cheap. They're struggling with producing it. It's obvious. Like I mentioned in my video, it's all in how you execute it. Yes, if you do creative things like with the Harvester for comedy, I'll give you props for it. But it doesn't excuse bad animation. But yes, they proceed to defend their review writer and say how they're going to agree with them, basically. Steve kicks things off with the fact that he's the authority on crap anime because he's watched a bunch of it. So you should listen to them. Yes, I know this is in jest. It's not lost on me. But that starts the authority figure segment. And this begins the blabbing on. First, about bad cuts. For some reason, they decide to point out the ice cream scene, which honestly, if you're gonna pick bad cuts, that's the worst one because that's the only one that, even though I can feel like it's bad cut, at least it could be explained. 2 spoonfuls, dude. Then they continue complaining about the CGI, which, yeah, again, sure. But then that just turns into a bunch of back and forths about cuts and timing and choices between intentional or not, which can all be summed up to what Steve says in the article, making lemonade out of lemons. Which, bam, that right there, I agree. That's what the studio is doing. They have crappy budget, they're not doing very well, they're struggling, and they're trying to make something out of it. Leave it at that. Nobody's arguing with that, besides the people that say, because this creator said something about the harvester, everything's intentional. But then Steve drags it out. Admittedly, he admits himself that it's all about like making a few cups before the lemons go bad, and then you're just basically diluting the bad taste. Which, yeah, sure, I guess that makes sense. Moving on, insert more authoritative qualifiers and another one, moving on. And this is where we get into the thing that, honestly, for me, sort of piqued my interest initially. Trying to understand why this article was essentially titled in the idea of, is it going for so bad it's good? And my mind immediately said, why are we even talking about that? What is even in Kamikatsu that is going to be claimed as so bad it's good? They're claiming that you can't intentionally go after so bad it's good. Yes, you can. It's been done before, it's done a ton of times. That's literally what Sci-Fi Channel turned into. Now, I can agree with you that the best of the so bad it's good are ones where it seems like it wasn't intentional to be bad. It's just because the writing's bad, or because it was produced badly, word of mouth spreads, fandoms spread it, or it goes viral for these days. Something in it resonated with the audience, but it can be intentional or not. But the key issue here is even implying that this is going for so bad it's good just because the cuts are bad and the CGI is bad. That's not what makes so bad it's good. So bad it's so good is more around writing in most cases. It's very rarely visually. Now, you can get memes out of specific cuts, but that doesn't make the show so bad it's good. But the key issue here with even making this part of the discussion is that it's themselves implying it. That the bad aspects of the shows that they are criticizing can be bad on purpose to achieve it's so bad it's good. So they ruin their entire argument, implying that the creator's going for it. So you're saying that you can't purposely do it, But then you're saying that they're trying to purposely do it. The bad aspects admitted by the team, or at least the creator, are aspects done purposely for comedic impact, not for purposely being bad. Is this getting across? I hope this is making sense to people. This is how it makes sense in my mind. I don't know why it doesn't make sense in their mind. It's not that they're running the show for the sake of making it so bad it's good. They have a source material to go by. And so even when you claim that you want them to just go with the clampy style, they can't because there's a source material to go by. This comedy is the source material. The visuals are not, but the comedy is. And this only goes further down the sinkhole when they start bringing up someone else doing it. Saying because Pop Team Epic does it, because the director or whatever working on Pop Team Epic is so great, it works there. Okay, now you're starting to identify the problem with yourself. You're creating presuppositions and applying it to it. You open the article with saying that you don't like the comedy and the director's not doing good. So you already have two things in it that is gonna make whatever comes after that not doing it properly. Comedy is subjective. Because it's not funny to you, you're thus not gonna get anything after that point. And your unwillingness to admit that is disingenuous, which we'll get into more of that later. Further down, it finally happens. This is where they finally get into it. The core of the problem that I just mentioned, the comedy. Quote, the characters and narrative exhibit an unsettling, juvenile quality. Oh, I love the unsettling word, unsettling. Which is further exacerbated by the story's frequent and abrupt shifts in tone and content. As I mentioned earlier with the reviewer, that's the point. Whoosh. That's the comedy style. And you missed the point. Just stop there. The moment you said this juvenile, just stop. Just stop. Just stop right there. It's not for you. And that's okay. Continuing, right. Any attempt to pass your anime's issues off as one big joke will crumble the instant you expect us to take it even remotely serious. We take this stuff seriously. Oh my gosh. But you won't take it seriously because you already hate it. I'm always willing to admit when a show doesn't work for me, and that's the reason why everything else in it doesn't work. Admitting that is being honest with your audience. Ignoring that is being dishonest. Now, I'm not gonna claim that I am the perfect being in the world. I probably have done it in the past, and maybe I've molded myself to not do that as much. But I make it a point to establish very quickly, especially with comedy, that something didn't work for me, and thus here's everything else it does, and if it didn't work or not. But starting it out by saying, it didn't work for me, but it might work for you. Here's where it broke for me, so you understand that that's probably why the rest of it didn't work. I'm willing to admit that. It doesn't seem like you're willing to admit that. Comedy is subjective, and it's obvious your reviewer and the two in this article, it didn't work for, and that's perfectly fine. Move on. But don't speak with authority over everything in the show when that is your starting point. Because it's very difficult to give an honest opinion about every turn and everything and how it flows when it's not working for you. The show is going for a style. The comedy is going for a style. The writing's going for a style. It's very chaotic and yes, very raunchy, juvenile. And that's not gonna work for everyone. But don't claim none of it works because it didn't work for you. Because you're starting from a point that is very subjective. Moving on, more qualifiers. I'm done. I'm done at this point. They wrap up the article by saying, I'll pour one out for poor pal Nick. We'll be counting on him to let us know how Kamikatsu turns out. No. Stop. This is like the meme. It's time to stop. Move on with your life. It's not gonna work for you. You've gone past the comedy, the jokes, the flow, and the twist, and it's not working. Move on. Nothing's gonna happen beyond this point that's gonna work for you. The whole thing is a big mess. The whole thing's a big mess. But I don't know, I'm glad to see that ANN is standing by their writers. Good on them. Whatever. Like I said before, that I pretty much started this whole thing out with, which is kind of nice to the whole point of this entire video. I've never cared for the opinion of ANN. And I probably never will. Most of their stuff is very Western and very to the sensitivities that they will have with the West. But whatever. Hopefully nobody takes them seriously. I know there's probably some fans out there. And they're probably in my comment section right now. But anyways, what do you guys think about this whole war between ANN and Kamikatsu? Do you think it's deserved? Do you not like it? Are you just like, I'll never read them? Every now and then I just have this random urge, if I just need a chuckle, and this is probably a weird thing for me, I'll just scroll through ANN and I'll just look for those little quick excerpts for their reviews for each episode just to laugh out of them. Like, the longest thing that's been going on with Insomniacs was like this continued thing where the first episode impressions was literally them talking about how it's about insomnia and that they've had insomnia, and it's just the entire article is about them relating because they had insomnia, and it's like, well, what about the show? They never talked about the show. And then it proceeds to have like these snippets that were basically them saying, I'm sad that they moved away from talking about insomnia. I'm like, that's the point. They're moving on. They're trying to ignore it. What? Why are you obsessed with them talking about insomnia? Like I said, it's always a kick. I just get a kick out of every time I read these excerpts. But anyways, hope you guys like this video. If you did, hit that like button. Leave me a comment. If you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you got my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, and a membership button down below. Greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel. You guys mean so much to me. And y'all take care.